Okay, we'll make a start. So, hello everyone, my name's Stephen Haunts. I'm coming to you from 5 a.m. in the Northern Hemisphere. I've forgotten what 5 a.m. feels like. Okay, so this talk is fighting back against a distracted world. Hopefully, it'll be a nice, more sort of relaxed talk that you can sort of unwind. Because I imagine everyone's been on WebEx for 3 days or 5 days if you've been doing workshops as well. So, thank you to everyone that's come along. I know by the time you get to the end of a conference, everyone's normally thoroughly knackered. Okay, so I'm a freelance trainer. So I do, I've done workshops for NDC. I've done private workshops as well as online workshops, and also I'm an instructor for Pluralsight. I've been doing that for nearly 7 years now, and also a Microsoft MVP. But this talk isn't a technical talk; it's more of a sort of soft skills, personal development talk. So I want to start off with a slide here. So a quote from Charles Dickens from A Tale of Two Cities. So it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. And this was written a very long time ago, but it still kind of sums up, I think, where we are as a society today. It was the best of times in that, we have the internet. I mean, I'm talking to you from God knows how many tens of thousands of miles away. And hopefully it should feel like we're all in the same room together. We have this amazing kind of technology. But it's also the worst of times because, even though we have all of these fantastic tools at our disposal, it can also become a bit of a distraction. We have Netflix with God knows how much content on there. We have Amazon Prime and, just all of these different things that are vying for our attention. YouTube, I mean, that's a particularly bad one. I can sometimes jump into a complete black hole when I go onto YouTube. So once we have all this brilliant technology, it also has this ability to kind of pull us away from the things that matter. So whether it's productivity with work or spending time with family and friends. So that kind of brings me on to sort of why I wanted to sort of talk about this subject, because for me personally, it's been quite important, and I've had to kind of grapple with a few things over the last few years. So as a sort of kind of an intro to a bit of a story, so I quit my job, my full-time job, my secure safety net of a job in July 2017. I just turned 40 at the time, and I've been doing Pluralsight courses for about sort of 3.5 years or so at the time. And I figured, now's the time for me to sort of strike out by myself and kind of work for myself. It's kind of something I've always kind of dreamed about doing. So that kind of started me on the quest for working from home. So I started working from home before it was kind of cool this year. Is it cool? I don't know. It's not cool. But, been doing that since 2017. Of course, I just turned 40 at the time. And whilst me and my wife had actually been discussing, what the plan was and when we was going to do it and all that, I hadn't really discussed it with a lot of other people. So I had a lot of friends and ex-colleagues get in touch with me because they knew I just turned 40. They're like, "Are you okay, Steve? You've just like quit your job, turned 40. Are you having a bit of a midlife crisis?" But I wasn't. It was a planned move. It's something that I'd intended to do for quite a few years. I was just waiting to get to the right point to do it. And it's kind of cool. You no longer have a boss looking over your shoulder telling you what to do, kind of keeping you focused by using fear or other techniques that managers like to do to keep us productive. I was completely responsible for my own time. I could wake up in the morning, be hyper productive, or I could just sit in bed and watch TV. Nobody was going to tell me, what I should be doing. So it means you have to sort of get quite disciplined with how you sort of spend your time and allocate your time. This was fantastic. For the first 9 months, I was producing content and, working like an absolute legend. I was really, really going for it. After 9 months, when you're sitting in the same room for 9 months, and it happened to be my dining room that I'd converted into an office because my wife also works from home and she has the office upstairs. She's been doing that for 17 years, so she gets dibs on the home office. But after about 9 months, I've got the lounge adjoining the room that I'm sitting in. And before you know it, you kind of just start moving into the lounge. You think, oh, I'll just put something on the telly while I'm working, something on in the background. And then before I realised it, I'd watched the entire of Big Bang Theory. I sort of started it in January, and by the middle of February, I'd watched every single episode. And at that point, I thought, that's not good. I mean, I was working. I wasn't slacking off. I was getting stuff done. But when you're kind of sitting on the sofa with the laptop on your lap, and then you watch like 13 seasons of a show, I kind of thought, yeah, this isn't good. That's kind of slipping into a bit of a habit. So also around this time, you start getting cabin fever setting in. I'm sure that's something that everyone's kind of more than familiar with after this year, where we've all had to kind of work from home at the last minute. But after a while, you kind of do get a bit of cabin fever setting in. So at that point, I was like, well, I really need to get out of the house. So I started looking around for a local co-working space, and I found one not too far from where I live. And that was a picture of my first rented desk at a co-working space. And that kind of started me on my journey of thinking, well, actually, being out of the house for me is actually quite a good thing. Nobody likes being sort of stuck inside, the irony. So I worked in a co-working space for a bit, and then after a while, I kind of moved on to my own rented office. This lad's actually old. I actually moved out of this office a few months ago. I'm kind of in a new office now because I wanted to be closer to home. So the office on the screen, I had to get the train to. It was kind of a 10-minute train journey, but trains are not the best things to be getting at the moment. But where I am now, I can drop my son off at school, walk to the office, then walk and pick him up, etc. It's kind of got me onto a sort of a period of sort of self-reflection about, what is the nature of distraction and how our, yes, someone just said synths in the background. Yes, they are a series of semi-modular synths. I can talk about them later if you want. This got me onto a period of sort of self-reflection about, how to be productive and what productivity means. So, which is kind of some of the subjects I want to tackle in this course. What has my slide stop producing? Oh, there we go. So I want to talk a bit about sort of procrastination and distraction. I want to talk a bit about social media addiction. Social media is both a great thing and also a complete curse. Something which I've had to grapple with quite a bit. I'll talk a bit about self-motivation and sort of general productivity and time management tips that have kind of helped me over the past few years to stay productive. So this isn't an I hate computers or I hate technology talk. It's far from it. I absolutely love technology, just like everyone here. It takes kind of dedication and passion to attend an event like this, where we're learning about lots of new sort of technical techniques. So this isn't me beating up on technology. It's far from it. It's about how can we make the technology work for us, and how can we be productive working with technology without it kind of taking over our lives and making us, get completely sucked into a black hole of YouTube and stuff like that. So it's not my aim to preach. I'm talking about a lot of stuff from my own personal experience, stuff that I've had to kind of focus on over the past few years, and hopefully some of it will help everyone here as well. Okay, so I want to talk a bit about distraction and procrastination specifically. So procrastination is something that we all suffer with. It's when you should be working on something, something quite important, but maybe you're not quite as engaged with what it is that you're supposed to be doing. So maybe your manager's asked you to do a report, or maybe in your scrum for that week, you've been assigned one of the really grotty tasks that you're not really interested in, and you kind of delay doing the work. Someone wrote tax returns. Yeah, tell me about it. That's always something that's very procrastination worthy. And, I used to be very bad with procrastination. My wife, in fact, used to call me half a job Steve, because I just, I've have this grand idea of something I want to do, and then I start it and then get bored and then just move on. I mean, like everyone else, I've got a GitHub repo, which is like a graveyard of half-finished projects. So, come on, PowerPoint, don't let me down today. Okay, so procrastination is the habit of putting off or delaying, especially something requiring immediate attention. So it's something we should be doing. We know it's important, but we put it off to the last minute, and then we kind of have a mad rush at the end to try and get something done, which normally results in us producing something of, not great quality, not our best quality work. So some of the dangers of procrastination, well, it can stop you achieving your goals because you don't put the effort into to achieve them. If you want to achieve at things in life, if you want to get better at things, you kind of have to turn up and put the effort in. But if you keep putting off that work because maybe you're not completely engaged or you're distracted, and it's going to stop you from achieving those goals. Also, it stops you from acting, quite literally, because you're more preoccupied with cat videos on YouTube or Twitter than you are in actually getting the work done. It doesn't push you to challenge yourself because by its very nature, by procrastinating, you're literally just doing, the minimum that you can get away with just to get something finished. And this in turn produces elevated stress levels because the work has to be done. If you've committed to your team that you're going to, do a certain amount of tickets within a scrum, for example, and you put some of that work off, it still has to be done. So you end up rushing at the end and it elevates your stress levels, which isn't healthy. So why do we procrastinate? So one of the most common ones is a fear of failure. So if we're having to work on something that's maybe new that we've not done before, maybe it's a new area of coding that we're not familiar with, or it could be a writing project that you're doing that you're not as comfortable with as what you would hope. Sometimes you can have this fear of messing it up. So, if I mess this up, what are my colleagues going to think of me? Are they going to think I'm a complete loser? Are they going to think I'm an idiot? And kind of that fear can be a bit paralyzing sometimes, and it can kind of put you off from acting. Procrastinators can often be perfectionists. So if you're working on something, you just don't want to let it go until it's absolutely perfect. And that can sometimes be a bit debilitating because you kind of have that fear about what you're working on. It's not going to be the best that it can absolutely be. You can kind of tend to put you off delaying starting that piece of work. Low energy levels are also a big problem with this. If you're feeling generally tired all the time, so if you have got into a habit of going to bed too late and you literally the first thing you do or the last thing you do before you go to bed is you've got a screen in front of you, that can affect your sleep patterns. You wake up tired in the morning, or if the kids wake you up, so I'm sure anyone here who are parents can vouch for this. When you've got young children waking you up at an ungodly hour, it just gives you low energy levels, and that can make you, not as optimal as you should be. And also, the last one here is there's millions and millions of reasons why we procrastinate. I'm just picking on kind of 4. But there can be a general lack of focus. So if you're just not engaged in the work that you're doing, and if you're normally a back-end developer, but you've been asked to help out on some front-end stuff, and it just really does not interest you, and you're not focused on it, then it can make you not focus on what you're doing. So there's a few sort of key areas that you can do to kind of decrease your chances for procrastinating. So one of them is accepting that we are not perfect. Everyone has things that they're good at, and everyone has things that they're necessarily not so good at. But, we're not perfect. I know some people try to come across as though they're perfect, but we're not. We're going to do things, we're going to mess things up. And that's fine. If you, in fact, failing at something or doing something wrong can ultimately be a benefit to you because you're going to be learning from that experience. So accept that you're not perfect. If you're going to build something that you've in a technology you've not used before, you probably are going to mess a few things up. You might have an awkward code review with a peer. Doesn't matter. We're not perfect. Also, failure is not fatal. If you do something a little bit wrong or it's not as good as it can be, unless of course you're working in a safety critical system or you're working on a nuclear power station, no one's going to die off the back of a mistake. It's not fatal. The world's not going to end. So if you kind of realise that, and if you do make a mistake, you just need to put it right. It's generally it's not a big deal. So aim to do your best and be happy about the output. Of course, it sounds very simple to say that, but sometimes you just need to think that I've done some work. If you are constrained by time, so you've been given a very tight deadline, do the best that you can do in that time with the resources you have available, and be happy and proud of what you've achieved. I'm a strong believer in that limitations actually make us more creative. So sometimes having a constrained timeline to get some work done can actually be a benefit, not a hindrance. Because if you have unlimited time or unlimited resources to work on something, then you end up just keep on iterating and iterating and iterating. And sometimes you can over-engineer things. So try to develop a healthier lifestyle and get more energy. I think this is kind of more important now than it's ever been, really, when we've all been sort of at home on various lockdowns around the world. I mean, trying to maintain a healthy lifestyle and actually get some exercise is probably one of the most important things you can do at the moment. You know, when we was at the height of our lockdown in the UK, back sort of, March, April, May time, I mean, the only excuse you was really allowed out of your house was to either go shopping or get some exercise. So whilst I'm not exactly the world's fittest person, and I'm not a gym bunny or anything like that, but I made sure I went out every day and sort of got a good brisk walk for an hour. Where I live is quite hilly, so it's like I live in a gym effectively. You just walking up these massive hills, and that actually did wonders for my concentration because I was actually forcing myself to go out. I mean, I've probably done more exercise this year just by going out walking than I've probably ever done, which is kind of cool. There's kind of a net benefit of the situation at the moment. Quickly, going to bed early. I mean, that's kind of an obvious one. The more sleep you get, the more rested you're going to be the next day. Kind of easier said than done. Because I knew I was going to be getting up at 4 a.m. to come to my office to do this talk. I actually went to bed really early last night. I went to bed at 8, which is something I've not done for a very long time. But because of it, I actually feel like I've got some energy this morning, so that's quite good. Then the other one, which we're all probably very guilty of, is reducing your screen time before bed. It's probably the easiest one to say, but the hardest one to achieve. Just because, we're all technologists. We've probably all got a laptop or a computer or a tablet or something thrust in front of our faces throughout the majority of the day. If you do have to use your computers late at night, do take advantage of these like screen time modes that you get. I believe Windows has something similar where it kind of removes a lot of those blue hues out of the screen and makes the screen a little bit more red and orange. That actually makes a big difference. So if you do insist on using a machine, make advantage of these screen time modes. Okay, so I want to talk a bit about social media addiction. This is something that I've had fun with over the last few years. So social media addiction, and this is quite a harsh slide, I do apologise if it makes anyone uncomfortable, but social media addiction, I believe, is just as bad as some of the other addictions that you can have, whether it be drugs, alcohol, smoking, or any of the other myriad things that we can get addicted to. And I think social media is actually a big problem. It's a great tool. It allows us to do a lot. I mean, I use Twitter quite a lot for my business. I have family and friends on Facebook. But it can be very easy to just let it run away and just sort of completely suck up all your time. And then before you know it, you're spending most of your time worrying about what people are thinking or doing. People that you may not have even seen that often, or may not actually be real world friends at all. And you just spend all this time worrying about what's going on. And really, you shouldn't really need to care. And, back in the days when we used to get public transport and travel around and stuff, I mean, this is kind of like a very common thing that you'd see. It's just you're on a train, nobody's talking to each other. Everyone's just got their faces buried into a phone. I'm guilty of it. I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of this as well. I'm as guilty as everyone else. And it's kind of, it's a bit sad in a way. I mean, we have all these wonderful tools, but then, anything that's good can be taken too far, I believe. So social media has quite big effects on the brain. Don't know if anyone's seen that documentary that's come out on Netflix recently. I think it's available worldwide, although I can't actually remember what it's called because my brain has gone blank. But they had it's a documentary and a drama about the effects of social media. And they're sort of showing one example of this teenager who's just, normal, happy-go-lucky teenager. The social dilemma, thanks. Just saw the comment pop up on the screen. And, one of the story threads in this documentary is they're showing about how easy it was for him to end up getting radicalized into a lot of the fake news, as we call it, as our favourite orange friend likes to call it. And, he starts getting gradually radicalized and then starts going on demonstrations where he's demonstrating about something that doesn't actually exist, but it's something that he's been radicalized about on social media. And it kind of has this really bad effect on the brain. So I want to talk a bit about, some of the chemicals and the hormones and how they get affected in our brain. This is quite fascinating when I started looking all this stuff up. So dopamine, so that's the neurotransmitter for reward, reinforcement and pleasure. So this is where you do something that's nice or fun and your brain gives you a little hit of dopamine that makes you think, oh, I enjoyed that. And, you get that from posting on social media. So if you post a funny picture and then loads of people click like, or you get some nice comments back, it gives you a little dopamine hit. Similar effect to drugs and alcohol. So if you drink alcohol or take drugs, it does the same thing. It gives you this kind of immense dopamine hit, which makes you feel good, and that can be addictive. So how can we kind of get a quick fix for this? How can we kind of repair this problem? So you want to try and get your dopamine rewards from somewhere else, because we all like dopamine. That's kind of why it's there. It's to help us feel good. Now, for me personally, when I'm completing a small task or a goal at work, that kind of physical act of ticking off the task, or clicking the I'm done button in whichever to-do management system you use, that kind of gives you a little dopamine hit as well. So something I always try to do is I try to really break my work down into quite fine granular tasks, so that I'm constantly ticking things off throughout the day. That kind of makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I've had a good productive day's work. I have a to-do item in my list for today, which is speak at NDC Sydney. So I shall be ticking that off once I finish this talk. Exercise. I had to go sightseeing on how I originally wrote this talk for NDC London in January before the world went crazy. But exercise, going sightseeing, is getting out and about in nature. That also gives you a good hit of dopamine. Or finishing a good book. There's nothing quite like getting to the end of a novel and having a nice satisfying ending to make you feel good. So another hormone is melatonin. So this governs the circadian rhythm, or your sleep-wake cycle. So this is quite important if your circadian rhythm gets out of balance and you just constantly feel tired. This goes back to the late night use of your computer. That kind of suppresses the melatonin production in your body, and melatonin is the hormone which helps you drift off to sleep. So if you don't have that in your body, then it gets very hard to get good quality sleep. It's a particular problem during winter. I mean, we're just approaching autumn, heading into winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. So there's not as much sunlight. We're not as blessed with sunlight as everyone in Australia. And because of that, your melatonin levels can go a bit out of whack as well. So it's kind of important to make sure that we get some sunshine, actual outdoor sunshine if you can. Again, in Australia, that's kind of a lot easier to do. I imagine it's quite warm in Australia at the moment. For those of us who live in the grim north of the planet, if you can't get sunlight, then you can get those like UV lamps. They're like 10,000 lux lamps, which actually are designed to give you a boost of sunlight to help, give you sort of stop your hormones from getting out of balance, which is quite good. Again, avoiding screens late at night, or if you have to, using the nighttime mode to kind of remove those blue hues from the screen. Warm bath or shower is normally a good one before bed, because it kind of relaxes your body and kind of gets you a bit more sleepy. And something that I try to do is I try to read before bed. So reading a chapter or two in the half an hour. Someone's wrote, use your phone to read. Yeah, well, that's an interesting one. I was one of these people that kind of got addicted to using a Kindle at one point, but I've actually gone the other way. I've sort of gone back to paper and tree books, which is quite good. I've gone old school. And I kind of much prefer it. Okay, so oxytocin. So this is a neurotransmitter that affects social interaction, sexual chemistry, and bonding between family and friends. This is an important one. So oxytocin increases with real-world social interaction, so hugging, kissing, physically being with people. And virtual interactions, they can increase your oxytocin levels slightly, but nothing like the real thing. And I think that's probably one thing that everyone in the world has kind of had a harsh dose of this year. So meeting with real-world family and friends, obviously, is a good way of increasing your oxytocin levels. I mean, that's been kind of okay in the UK for the last few months, although we're starting to see things go the wrong way. So we're starting to have more lockdowns imposed. So that's probably going to go on hiatus for a bit. But, if you have children, making sure you can spend time playing with them is a great way to increase those oxytocin levels. It can be very hard when you're trying to work from home and you've got children at home as well, and you're trying to get this kind of work-life split. It's one of the reasons why I sort of rented my own office, because I wanted to keep home for home and work for work, but I know it's not always easy to do that. But, real world conversations and physical contact. I mean, obviously, we're all trying to make do as best we can, and we're using tools like WebEx and Zoom and Teams as kind of substitutes for that. But when the world does go back to normal, make sure you sort of spend time with your friends and family. Okay, so last one I was going to look at is serotonin. So this is a neurotransmitter that contributes to the feeling of happiness and well-being. So high levels of this do sort of make you feel happy and quite energetic. Low levels of serotonin are linked with being depressed and feeling down or glum and being very lethargic. And it can cause, low levels of this can cause negative thoughts, irritability, anxiety, some things that, a lot of people have to grapple with. And social media is kind of a big one here as well, because it can really affect your feeling of self-worth. And I know this is a very big thing with Instagram where, and I found this as well, is you're scrolling through Instagram and everyone only posts the good things, the great things that are happening in their lives, never the bad things. People don't like to talk about the bad things that happen. So when you're scrolling through, they call it doom scrolling, don't they? You're kind of scrolling through Instagram and all you can see is like, so-and-so's doing this brilliant thing or this amazing thing's happening here and everyone's so happy and lovely. That can make you feel a bit rubbish, I find. And I found, some friends of mine who I know are generally quite miserable people. You look at what they post on Instagram, and even then you think it's like rainbows and unicorns. But, it isn't rainbows and unicorns. People only post, they kind of project kind of a persona of things that they want people to think, they want you to think that they're happy and everything's brilliant. But that's not always the case. And that can kind of affect your self-worth and make you feel inadequate, which is not good. And then that sort of leads to a lack of serotonin in your body. So again, quick fixes for this. So exercise and sunshine at the same time is even better if you can. Trying to maintain a positive outlook. And that's kind of one that, very easy to say, but, I don't know, but yeah, I've had trouble maintaining a positive outlook for most of this year. But if you just think to yourself, things are going to be okay. I'm going to get this project done. It's going to be some good work. I'm going to deliver something that I'm really proud of. This bloody virus thing, it's going to go away at some point. Things will get better. Just maintain that positive outlook. And that glass is half full, damn it. So you can sum this up as a quote. Now, this thing, I wrote a very long article about this on my blog a while ago, so I'm kind of quoting myself, which is a bit weird. But social media is dangerous because it rewards yourself for posting and getting likes, which is dopamine. It makes you feel artificially connected, oxytocin. Even if you are isolated deep inside, it makes you feel bad about yourself, serotonin, as you vicariously live the life of your friends. But, things aren't all bad. But, as I say, constantly seeing people being happy all the time, that's kind of one of the big pitfalls of social media, I find, is that, not to say people are living a lie, I think that's a bit harsh, but people only project what they want people to see. So, you're not going to post on Instagram and go, oh, I had a massive argument with my wife this morning. That's generally not what you're going to post. You might post a nice picture of a hill or a tree that you saw on a walk. So I want to talk about kind of how I grappled with social media. Now, I'm not saying this is how you have to do it. This is just kind of what I did to deal with it. Might work for you, might not. But, it's like with fad diets. If you try and give something up completely, then it's just going to be doomed to failure. So, when people go on a fad diet to try and lose a bit of weight, you might do really, really well at giving up all the nice things for a couple of weeks, but eventually you're going to fall off the wagon and you're going to have that cream cake. And it's the same with social media. If you just try to cut it out of your life because you think it's bad, that's not going to work. So what I do is I've kind of partitioned social media into two buckets. So Twitter and LinkedIn, I only use for work. They're work tools. So I don't go on Twitter to have a deep, meaningful interaction with friends and family. That's not what Twitter is for me. I use Twitter to engage with people that follow my courses or listen to my talks. That's its use. And the same with LinkedIn. It's kind of a way that I can promote stuff that I'm doing, have more businessy, serious conversations with people. Whereas Facebook, for me, is more of a social tool. I had to make some big changes to Facebook, which I'll talk about in a bit. But Facebook is a social tool for my personal life. The same as Instagram. That's kind of where I'll post the cat pictures on Instagram, not on Twitter necessarily. So at one point on Facebook, I had 750 friends. Didn't even know that I knew 750 people. And to be honest, I didn't really know them, a lot of them that well. So I was wasting far too much time on Facebook. I was getting hopelessly addicted to it, which my kids find hilarious because the children just aren't interested in Facebook at all. They see it as the social network for old people, which is quite funny. But I kind of put a little process in, which I went through just to help reduce that friend list on Facebook. Because I was contemplating just deleting Facebook at one point, but my wife was like, well, you've got all of the pictures on there and the albums from when the kids were babies, and the family can see that, and that's the only place where those photos live online. So I was like, okay, we'll keep it. So I had a little process, and I called it "Do you stay or do you go?" A bit like a game show. I need a little jingle playing in the background. So first of all, if you're family or close friends, and by close friends it means, do I see you in the real world? Will I likely go to the pub with you, or for a coffee shop, or the cinema? If you're in those categories, then of course you stay. You're actual real life people that I speak to and see, so they're obviously going to stay. Co-workers that I actually like. Yeah, it's very easy just to add all your co-workers, but do you really like all your co-workers? Really? Enough that you want to be on Facebook with them? And no disrespect to all my ex-co-workers, some of them are lovely people, but they're not, not necessarily the people that I'm going to spend time with outside of work. They were co-workers. But, there was a handful, 6 or 7 people over the years that I've become very, very close to, who are very good friends. So those ones will stay. If I saw you on the street, am I likely to try and hide so that I don't have to talk to you? Am I going to dive into a shop or hide behind a phone box? If that's the case, then I'm really not going to have you on Facebook. And there are people that I don't really want to bump into on the street, so probably makes me sound awful, doesn't it? Also, people that are chronic complainers or overly political. Even if they survive those first 3 boxes, if they were people that just constantly complaining or they're just constantly going on about politics, then I'll just get rid of them. So I have some friends or people that I know, acquaintances who, they don't live in the US. They live in Europe. I won't say where, so I don't want to single anyone out, but they live in Europe, but they're constantly going on about Trump. Literally every post is a jibe about Trump or something that Trump's done or some kind of political rant. So you don't even live in that country. Now everyone's going to have vent steam at some point or other. I mean, I've done it myself. That's fine. But when people are just constantly going on about it, and it's just all their posts are about, or they're constantly whinging and complaining, kind of gets you down a bit. And I didn't really want to see that on my feed, so they went. So I went from 750 so-called friends or acquaintances down to 50 people, close family, friends, ex-colleagues that I actually get on with. And you know what? Facebook's actually quite an enjoyable place. I quite like going on there because I like seeing what my family's doing. I've got family all over the world. It's nice seeing what they're doing. Seeing what my friends are up to, especially during lockdown, has been nice. I actually, not talking about Facebook the company. That's a whole rant you could go into separately. But actually, as a social network and a place where family and friends are, it's now nice. I quite like it. Okay, so Twitter, or as I like to call it, the toxic dumpster fire of hate. I mean, this is a weird, strange place. I'm trying to be polite. But Twitter, it's like, as a tool that I use for running my business, as a way of engaging with people that watch my courses or read my books or come to my talks, that level of engagement is great. If someone posts and says, "Oh, Steve, I really enjoyed that talk," or "I watched that course and it was really great," that's good. I like that. That makes me feel good. I always engage with those people and say thank you, and and we'll talk to them. But also on Twitter, it can be absolutely vile, really, really vile place. So to be honest, I mostly use it for notifications of stuff that I've done. I retweet the odd silly video that makes me smile, but I never have a deep and meaningful conversation with anyone on there. Oh, if someone, as I said, tweets me and says, "Oh, I really like that thing that you did," I'm going to reply and I'm going to, have an exchange with that person. But I'm never going to have a deep conversation with people on Twitter. It's just not the place, I don't think. So again, like with Facebook, I was following thousands of people somehow. I don't know how. I think it's just, as you go to events, it's like, you meet someone and you kind of swap Twitter handles, and then you just end up with a huge, huge, huge list of people. So I removed people that I was following that I didn't really know. You can't follow everyone. The Twitter feed just becomes completely unbearable. So I removed kind of everyone that I didn't know. Same as what I did with Facebook. Another thing which a lot of people don't make use of is lists on Twitter. And this is quite a good feature. You can categorize people into different lists. So I have a list for all my speaker friends. I've made a huge amount of friends on the speaking circuit. So I have a list that they're all in. I have a list for book authors that I admire and respect. I have a Pluralsight authors list because a lot of my friends who make courses are on there. So I make lots of different lists. I have one which is just movie celebrities because, like everyone else, I'm quite interested in what The Rock gets up to daily, or Jack Black. But by using lists, when I use Twitter, I very, very rarely go onto the main Twitter feed. I just don't use it. I tend to go directly to the lists and just look on there, because then that kind of gives you a much more filtered down view of the people that you actually want to hear from. Now, I also use various tools to make Twitter work for me. I'll come on to some of them in a moment, but there's various different tools like Buffer, for example, that you can use to actually sort of make managing your social media interactions just a bit more straightforward. But one thing that I didn't actually know existed, it was actually Dylan Beattie that told me about it. And he said that he does this, which was a brilliant idea. It was actually using keyword blocking to mute keywords or subjects that you don't want to hear about. And as I said, Twitter can be an absolutely toxic, vile place a lot of the time. But by muting various different keywords, like Donald Trump, Brexit was a big one, withdrawal agreement, that was one that kept on getting mentioned in tweets a lot, so I muted it. By doing that, you can just kind of filter out stuff that you don't want to hear about. So if there's particular subjects which kind of make you anxious or just put you in a bad mood, you can just basically mute them and they don't show up, which is quite good. That's actually quite a good way of reducing a lot of the bile that kind of surfaces up to the top on Twitter. Some interesting tools here. So I mentioned about Buffer. So Buffer is kind of a browser plugin. So if you come across an interesting article by someone, say you read Scott Hanselman's latest post and you want to tweet it, you can just send it to Buffer, and then Buffer will schedule sending out those tweets over time instead of it just constantly going to Twitter straight away. That's quite a useful tool. And there's another tool called Later as well, which is quite good. So if you're using things like Instagram and Twitter for work purposes, for promotion activities, marketing, that sort of thing, Later just lets you schedule different tweets. It gives you like a calendar view, a bit like Outlook, and you can just kind of schedule when certain things get sort of sent out, which is quite good if you're using it for work purposes. Instagram, never really had a problem with, to be honest. I didn't really need to do anything with that. It's, I keep a fairly curated list of people that I follow on there. Never really had any problems with it, so I didn't really need to do any corrective action with it. I don't feel addicted to Instagram. I never have done. I'll go on once a day, maybe, just have a little look around, see what's going on, but never really had a problem. Same with LinkedIn. Again, LinkedIn has its role in life. It's kind of where all of the recruitment consultants live. It's kind of a work, recruitment-y, business-y type tool. Never really had a problem with it. Don't use it a huge amount, to be honest. So I didn't really have to do anything with it. One change I made was removing social media from my phone. Because you kind of had this kind of reflex action where you just go into your pocket and pull your phone out and immediately go to Slack or Twitter or Facebook. And that can be a bit of a habit that you get into, even when you're going out for a walk. And it's, I live in the Peak District National Park in the UK, so it's a really beautiful place. And you're walking around with all these like nice green rolling hills, and then you pull your phone out and start looking at Twitter. It's like, what on earth? So I removed it from my phone. That kind of made a big difference. Now, it's not me rejecting social media. You know, I have all of the social media platforms on my tablet. It's generally my iPad where I use a lot of these things. I don't tend to use them on my Mac or anything like that. The thing that does worry me the most is kind of children, because they're the generation now that are growing up where all they've known is social media and the internet and computers. You know, I'm in my mid-40s now, and it's like, I remember a time where we didn't have the internet, or when we did have the internet, it was dial-up, and then you get shouted at by your dad for the huge phone bill. But I do kind of worry about kind of what this means for children, and I've noticed it with my daughter. I mean, she's 11; she's just started high school. You know, she has a phone. She has like an old hand-me-down laptop of mine that I've given her, and she's starting to get into interacting with her friends on social media and using the internet. I mean, that bloody app TikTok seems to be the thing that they're using all the time at the moment, which is quite frightening, I think, as a parent. So one thing we've done is we've started doing what I call the ban hammer at home. So on most routers that you have at home, you can set up parental controls. You can kind of put different rules in for different devices. So this is what I've done for the children, just to control the use a bit. So at the minute, when the kids wake up in the morning, the internet for their devices is completely disabled. Now, if they want it on, and they're allowed to use it in the morning, we don't mind, but they have to get ready for school. So uniforms on, brush your teeth, have your breakfast, you know, be ready to go. And they've got to do half an hour of reading. Once they've done all of that, I'll gladly switch the internet back on, which probably makes me sound a bit mean. But, you know, it kind of works. You know, the kids now know, instead of arguing with me about it, they just get up, get ready, do the reading, then they get their internet turned on. And the same in the evening. So when they get home from school, there is no internet for them. The Wi-Fi is disabled, and I've got it sort of set up on a rule and a schedule. And I've got a little button on my phone I can press to turn it on. So they come in, if they've got any homework assigned to them by their teacher, do the homework. Again, half an hour of reading, and make sure your room's tidy. So now we've kind of got it as a habit that they just don't complain about it anymore. They just come in, get these things done, then they can have the internet back on. So it's kind of strike this balance about, you know, you want your children to use the internet, you want them to use these tools and become familiar with them and use them safely. But also you want to kind of be, you know, you're the parent, you want to be in control. Because it can be very easy for it to get out of control, especially during lockdown. I mean, I'm not pretending that we're perfect parents by any stretch. We're not. During lockdown, these rules were a bit more loose. Me and my wife are trying to work. You know, we do the homeschooling sessions with them, and then at the end of that, it's like, look, just bugger off to your room. Here's your phone. Here's the internet. Just leave me and your mum alone so we can actually get some work done. So I'm not saying that we're perfect, but during normal times when they're at school and stuff like that, then this rule worked quite well. Okay, so something I want to talk about now is sort of it's like the things that make us worry a lot of the time, and the things that cause us distractions, and the things that cause us to not be productive and succeed in life, are worrying about things that we don't have control over. So, for example, things I don't have control over. I don't have any control over this. I don't have any control over the time. Time marches on. There's nothing I can do about it until we figure out how to do time machines. I can't control the weather. Now, I am British. We do like to complain about the weather all the time, but I can't control it. I can't make it stop raining. I can't make it sunny. And generally, you know, I can't control what people think of me. Yeah, you go through life trying to be nice, trying to help people, but if someone wants to trash talk you or be nasty, not really anything you can do about that. But you know, things I can control, things that are within my control, are being able to hit deadlines for work, making sure the children are happy, engaged, safe, and well looked after, controlling your weight and fitness and health. I mean, I do need to lose a bit of weight. I'm not going to say I'm completely in control of that one, but you know, they are things that are within our control to do something about. And the same with social media. You know, how we interact with people on social media is within our control. You know, it's within my control to be nice to people. It's within my control to be horrible to someone, which obviously I'm not saying you want to do. That's not very nice, but that's kind of something you can control. But there's things on the left you have no control over whatsoever. So don't worry about them. Is basically the thing I'm trying to say. It's only worry about what you can control. But it is very easy for us to kind of get into a bit of a spiral of worrying about things that we can't control. So it's a more real worldy thing. So, we've got this whole Brexit thing going on in the UK at the minute. We had the opportunities to vote. Those were that was our opportunity to have control. Didn't quite go the way I wanted, but there you go. But apart from that, do I have any control over what happens with it now? Well, no, there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm not going to worry about it. All the stuff with COVID and coronavirus and all of that, do I have any direct control over that? Well, apart from just following the rules and social distancing and wearing masks and all that. But apart from that, I'm trying to get out of the habit of worrying about it. I know things are going to get better. They did get better for a while until we sort of started having a second wave. But, but in general, I'm not going to, I've kind of stopped fretting about it too much. It's, I can't control it. We just need to do as we're told, follow the rules, and then hopefully things will get better. Okay, so I want to quickly finish off with some general little productivity, or little things you can do to help be productive and succeed at work and life. So we'll go through these fairly quickly. I think I've got about 10 minutes left, or thereabouts, 15 minutes, so we're doing good for time. Some of these are going to be obvious, but I'm going to spell them out anyway. Stay hydrated, drink lots of water. It's one of those things where someone mentions it and you just start rolling your eyes like, yeah, I know I'm supposed to drink water. But actually, it is fundamentally important. One of the best things you can actually do is as soon as you get up in the morning is drink a glass of water. It just kind of helps prime your mind and helps wake you up and be a bit more alert. So I try to do this. I always have a glass of water before I then go and down gallons of coffee. Again, we've talked about this, but getting plenty of sleep. I'm not going to labour on the point too much, but sleep is important. But in our connected internet days that we're in now, it's easier said than done. I think from being a parent, I used to be someone who was, more of a night owl, would prefer staying up late and hated getting up in the mornings, but I've been completely retrained by the wife and kids that I now like a nice cozy early night. And then I get up normally at 6 a.m. every day. Exercise, again, you don't have to be a complete gym bunny. You don't have to be pumping iron all the time or going down the gym and using every single machine. But just little small adjustments in your life make all the difference. So I say, whilst this year has been not nice, I was about to say a naughty word then, whilst this year hasn't been pleasant, one of the benefits, if I sort of try and maintain a positive outlook about it, is I've actually got more exercise this year than I think I've ever done, because I've been out every day doing an hour's walk, because you're worried that it's going to get taken away from you with another lockdown. So I've been going out and doing it. I relocated my office to the town that I live, and it takes me 25 minutes brisk walk to get here. Do that a few times a day whilst dropping the kids off at school. It's, it all adds up. Setting goals is kind of really important, both work and personal goals. Fairly short-term goals as well, stuff that you can look at and achieve. So I have like a to-do management system that I use. I use one called OmniFocus. As well as having my daily to-dos and tasks and all that stuff in there, I also have my goals in there, things I want to achieve. So one of the things I said about lockdown is that I want to come out of lockdown better than before I went in. So I've got lots of projects that I want to do. I've got courses I want to build, both on like Pluralsight and Skillshare. I've written a brand new talk, which I delivered at a user group last week for the first time. So that felt really good. I'm working on another book. So I've kind of tried to knuckle down and just get this book written. So I've got these little goals and things that I can look at. And these goals aren't too long. I think the longest goal is about 3 months out. So it's something that's achievable. But actually writing down what you want to do, whether it's a work or a personal goal, is a powerful thing. We talk about SMART goals with our objectives at work. Do exactly the same thing, but for your personal life. It's actually a very powerful tool. Again, using a daily journal doesn't have to be handwritten. I like to do a lot of handwritten notes. I've kind of gone a bit more old school and analog. But use something to plan your life. Especially in a minute where it can be very easy just to switch off and not get stuff done with everything that's going on. Actually having some kind of tool, whether it's a physical book or or a piece of software that you use. It just helps you plan and focus your life, so you always know, work-wise at least, what's next. I mean, you're not necessarily going to do that for your personal life, but just knowing what's coming up next is kind of important, because then it kind of doesn't make you think too much about what you need to do. Blocking out time on your calendar is something that's quite important. Could be easier said than done if you're working in a regular company with sort of colleagues and employees or employers. But blocking out time when you're going to be productive in a calendar can sometimes be useful for some people. So, for example, when I was my last regular job that I was working in before I quit, I had various different blocks in my calendar. So 10 until 12 in the morning, phone was off, email was off. That was focused work time. And then the same for 2 till 4. So 4 hours a day was complete focused work time. And unless there was an absolute emergency going on, I wouldn't answer emails. I wouldn't answer the phone, unless it was my wife or the school, of course. But 4 hours a day, it's not a lot. It's only 4 hours in a work day. If you just focus completely in that time, then all the other time, before 10 o'clock, between 12 and 2 in the middle of the day, that's when people can come and talk to you. That's when you can answer your emails. That's when you can go and search the web. But 4 hours a day was always focused work time. Reward yourself for hitting goals. This is an important one. As you do work, whether it's tickets for a scrum or if it's some personal work you're doing, just give yourself that little reward. I mean, when got a picture of a nice little puppy on the screen there, when a dog does something good, you give them a little biscuit. Kind of do the same with you. I'm not advocating rewarding yourself with cream cakes and biscuits, because that's probably not good. But during the lockdown, as I was trying to get work done, which is obviously distractions of the children bugging you constantly, but if I got the work done that I wanted to do during the day, that's when I went out and did my daily walk. That was kind of like my little reward at the end of the day for getting stuff done. If you do a lot of writing in your job, outlining is a really, really powerful tool. It may not be necessarily as relevant to everyone, but if you're writing something like a blog post or a report or a book or something like that, actually starting off with an outline, which you then develop, and you keep developing the outline until it turns into final products, is a really good way of being able to do lots of writing in a short space of time. I mean, I've written several books, and people say to me, "Oh, how do you sit down and write a book? It's such a huge task." So, well, I do an outline. So I start out with the title, then I know roughly what the chapters are going to be, because the structure of the chapters over the course of a book kind of tells a story from beginning to end. They're like your heading level 1s in Word. And then I start littering it with heading level 2s. Well, in this chapter about this particular subject, what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about this, 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 and this. So I'll do that for the whole book. And then for those heading level 2s, I start breaking those down into subpoints. Well, what are the things I want to talk about? And I might do that up to heading level 4, for example. And then I start doing my research. It's like, well, there's some interesting resources on this website. There's some interesting stuff in this book. So I start pasting resources in there. Then I go through and I start doing, well, now that's kind of where all the research for the facts are. Kind of, how do I feel about this particular subject? So I make some notes about how I feel. Before you realise it, you've got a 50-page outline with everything that you need in there for that book. And then you just start at the beginning and start working through, and you start removing those notes and changing it for content. And, a lot of writers have actually talked about the fact that their secret weapon is effective outlining. And that's exactly the same for me. When I build a Pluralsight course, it starts out as a script. So an hour and 20-minute course could be a 25,000 word document. And it's the exact same way that I do it. I go through this outlining process and I gradually whittle it down, and then eventually you have a script that you can record. We've focused on we've talked about this a little bit, but breaking things down into smaller tasks is a really, really effective tool, especially if you're being asked to do something at work in an area that you're not as familiar with. So maybe you're back-end developer and you've been asked to help implement something in React. If you look at the task on its own, you might think, oh my God, how am I going to do this? But you break it down and then you keep breaking it down until you're not anxious anymore. Now that could be file, new, create project. You could go down to that granular level, Second task, let's get a basic hello world going. Next task, let's pull some data out of the database and reflect it on the screen. Let's make that data actually look a bit nicer and give it a nice font. You could break it down to that level, and then before you know it, you've gone through these tiny little micro tasks where you're inching forward a tiny bit each time. And before you know it, at the end of the week, you've kind of built this whole new thing, which you didn't even think you could do. So, it probably sounds like I'm sort of stating the obvious, but breaking things down to the point where you're not anxious about it anymore is a good tool. I talked about focused work time, about blocking out time in your calendar, but some people work really well if they have very focused work sprints, and the Pomodoro technique is, I'm sure, the one that we're all familiar with. Now, whether you have a physical tomato timer or whether you use one of these little tools that you can use online or on your computer, I use one on my Mac where you set a little timer. It basically blocks the internet, so you can't go to YouTube or Twitter or anything, and then it keeps going for 10 minutes. Then a little alarm goes off, and then you can have a little break. So, very powerful tool. How we do for time? 5 minutes. Okay, so batching similar tasks together is another kind of powerful technique as well. So if you have to do constant mental switching between different tasks, that's quite expensive. We talk about, context switching on computers being expensive. It's exactly the same in your brain as well. So I tend to batch tasks together. So this week, for example, so what have I done this week? I'm finishing off a Pluralsight course. So beginning of the week, I did all of the recording in one go. So I was in recording mode. That was kind of where my brain was at. So I did the recording. Wednesday and Thursday, so yesterday and the day before, video editing. I was in video editing mode. Fridays, so one of my beloved tasks I have for this morning is any kind of business finance stuff. So filing receipts, going through Xero and tagging stuff and all that. I tend to do that Friday morning. So I kind of have receipts and stuff in a box, and I kind of do all that in one go. And for me, that's quite powerful. It helps remove that expensive context switch by doing the same tasks at the same time. This is one that's also worked quite well for me. Those really horrible, grotty tasks that you don't want to do them in the morning. Do them when you get to work. Because at the start of the day, you're more alert. You've got more mental energy, more physical energy. So if you tackle those rubbish tasks at the beginning of the day, and then as you start to flag, especially after lunchtime, you start waning in energy a bit, then you can start doing the tasks that you do actually quite enjoy, because you'll probably be more motivated to get them done. This is something I used to do quite a lot. Declaring regular email bankruptcy. So I've tried to do inbox zero. I've failed to do inbox zero. At one point, I think I had like 10,000 unread emails in my inbox because I just don't check them all. And that can get quite annoying when you open up your email app and you've got this like big glaring number coming up at you. So what I used to do is every quarter, I would just, everything that's not been read, I'd mark it as read, whack it in an archive folder. If someone gets in touch with me and it's really that important, they're going to get in touch again. And, this isn't going to be for everyone. I know some people are very particular about how they manage email. Something I've actually recently started doing is that new email service, hey.com. I started using that, and that's actually got some really good techniques built into the app about how you manage emails, about how it screens emails for you and stuff. I'm not affiliated to them, so I'm not trying to sell it. That's just saying I found that's quite useful. Blocking apps or direct focus apps are quite useful. So this is one I use here. It's called an app called Focus. It's on the Mac. There's equivalents on Windows as well. And what this does is you can set timers up or different times during the day where it just will not let you on certain websites. So if you try and sneakily go onto facebook.com, instead of going to Facebook, it just shows you a little inspirational quote. And that's quite good because I try to avoid using these sites on my main work machine. I kind of use my iPad as my kind of consumption device where I consume media. Pardon me. We've covered this one a bit. So social media on your phone is generally a bad idea. Listening to music, getting quite low on time. So listening to music is something that's quite powerful to do. There's been various studies that show that doing repetitive work is more efficient when you have background music. So that's from Applied Ergonomics in 1972. Surgeons are more accurate and efficient when they operate with background music. I hope they're listening to classical music and not Slipknot. You imagine that you're about to go under on a general anaesthetic and the surgeon puts Slipknot or Rammstein on. That could be a bit worrying. A study conducted to correlate the number of identification of classical rock music concluded that participants were able to identify numbers faster and more accurately whilst listening to music. Music is proven to aid in positive moods, better quality of work, and improved efficiency. So there's quite a few different studies there. Something I use quite a lot is an app that plays ambient sounds through your headphones. Kind of just helps block out what's going on around you, so you can have, like, birds in a park and a nice crackling campfire and stuff like that. That works pretty well. I was debating taking this slide out because when I wrote this, obviously people were more traveling around a lot more, but getting a change of scenery is quite important. Now, if you're working at home, so if you're still remote working, the one way technique you can do is to rearrange your workspace. So I did this several times over lockdown. So changing the position of your desk and changing the layout of the room. And if you do that kind of every few months, it kind of tricks you a little bit into thinking that you're working somewhere different, because it forces you to give your workspace a really good clean out as well. Yes, Noisily was that app I was using. Just saw the comment flash up. Okay, so we've covered quite a lot there. I hope everyone has liked it. So one of the things we talked about was procrastination. Procrastination is a massive problem, but we talked about some techniques for trying to overcome it. Social media, again, if you want to be in that position where you're actually controlling social media and you're not letting social media control you, it's a problem that I think everyone faces. Again, trying to balance this with children as well. So, I mean, I have two children, 11 and 8 years old, and they're getting into using computers. My son doesn't use any social media, but he is kind of addicted to YouTube, whereas my daughter just uses TikTok all the time. So trying to actually sort of teach children best practices is kind of important. So I kind of end on the slide that we started with, the quote from Charles Dickens. So it's the best of times, it was the worst of times. Best of times in that we have all of these amazing tools. Computers, from a software development point of view, I'm a Microsoft person. So look at all these fantastic tools that we have for building, new systems. We've got Netflix, we've got Amazon Prime, we've got all these different things that give us all of this wonderful content, but it can also be an absolute curse because it's just going to be there pulling our attention away from the things that are important. So you need to kind of grapple with these distractions. So I've got a few things you might be interested in. I've got a small book called A Gentle Introduction to Beating Procrastination and Getting Focused. It's only a short book. It's less than 100 pages. I figured you don't really want to have a massive long book about procrastination because people just won't read it. I've also got a course on Pluralsight. So if you're a Pluralsight subscriber, Pluralsight's actually free this week. So I think you've got a day left of being able to use Pluralsight for free if you're not currently a subscriber at the time of this recording. But I've got a course on there called Increasing Productivity by Beating Procrastination, which has been quite popular. And also have another book that I released earlier this year called The Art of Conversation, which is about how to talk to people so that they'll listen. Refining your communication skills, because I'm quite an introverted person. I used to struggle, and one of the ways I got around the problem with talking to people was by starting public speaking, which kind of helped me. But this book's about how to improve your communication skills with people. So with that, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to come along and talk to you today. This is my second NDC Sydney, whereas obviously the first time I did it, I actually got to come over to Sydney, which was really good fun. But it's been great to talk to you. I know it's the end of the conference, so everyone's probably absolutely knackered. You can engage with me. So I've got a blog at stephenhaunts.com. Contact me via that, or I'm also on the Toxic Dumpster Fire of Hate with the address at Stephen Haunts. So you can connect to me on Twitter there as well. So with that, thank you very much.